He was the man who wrote that all men are created equal. Yet he enslaved more than 600 people in his lifetime. He spoke passionately of liberty, but kept secrets that challenged everything he claimed to stand for. This is the story of Thomas Jefferson, a founding father with two faces, a visionary who dreamed of a free republic, and a man who lived a double life. When Americans think of their founding fathers, Jefferson usually stands near the top. The author of the Declaration of Independence, the third president of the United States, a philosopher, a scientist, a statesman. But behind the marble statues and the romanticized history books is a man full of contradictions. And those contradictions shaped a nation.
Jefferson is acting like a king, the very thing he supposedly despised.
I have often thought that true power lies not in the sword, but in the mind guided by principle. I am Thomas Jefferson, born on Virginia soil.
Let's rewind to 1776. Jefferson, only 33 years old, is chosen to draft a document that will break the American colonies free from British rule. In just 17 days, he pens the Declaration of Independence. Its words are poetic. All men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But while he wrote those words, dozens of enslaved people worked his land at Monticello, his sprawling Virginia plantation. Jefferson's own life violated the very principles he proclaimed, and he knew it. Early drafts of the Declaration actually included a passage blaming King George III for the slave trade, a move Jefferson likely hoped would distance himself from the system. But that passage was removed, quietly. By the time the Declaration was signed, the contradiction was complete. The champion of freedom was also a master of slaves. Jefferson inherited his first enslaved people at age 21. By the end of his life, the number had swelled past 600. Many of them lived and died at Monticello, building his legacy while being denied their own. He kept meticulous records of their births, work schedules, and punishments. And yet in public, he continued to speak of liberty, democracy, and the moral dangers of slavery. It wasn't just hypocrisy, it was a pattern. And Jefferson's double life wasn't limited to slavery. He was also deeply involved in shaping America's early political system, often behind the scenes. As Secretary of State under George Washington, he clashed bitterly with Alexander Hamilton, the Treasury Secretary. They had completely opposing visions for the country. Hamilton wanted a strong central government, a national bank, and closer ties with Britain. Jefferson wanted a decentralized agrarian republic, one where states had more power and the economy was rooted in farming. Their rivalry was fierce, but Jefferson took it even further. While serving in Washington's cabinet, he secretly funded newspapers that attacked Hamilton, anonymously. Using government salary while still holding office, Jefferson quietly pulled the strings of a political propaganda machine. One article after another smeared Hamilton, questioning his loyalty, his finances, and even his personal life, all orchestrated by the man who claimed to value unity and honor. These political feuds eventually gave birth to America's first two-party system, the Federalists and the Democratic Republicans. Jefferson became the figurehead of the latter, but his rise wasn't clean. He played the game just as ruthlessly as any politician today. By the time Jefferson became president in 1801, he carried a complicated reputation. Some saw him as the true protector of liberty. Others saw a man too idealistic for the real world. But in 1803, he made a decision that would define his presidency: the Louisiana Purchase. For just $15 million, Jefferson doubled the size of the United States. It was a geopolitical masterstroke: 828,000 square miles of land bought from Napoleon's France. But here's the twist. Jefferson had always believed in a strict interpretation of the Constitution, and the Constitution never gave the president power to buy land. His own principles told him not to do it, but the opportunity was too good. So Jefferson changed his view. He justified it. He bent the rules. The strict constitutionalist became a flexible opportunist, and once again, Jefferson's actions didn't match his words. But perhaps the most controversial part of his life wasn't political, it was personal. After his wife Martha died in 1782, Jefferson never remarried, But whispers grew over time about his relationship with one of his enslaved women, Sally Hemings. Sally was believed to be the half-sister of Jefferson's late wife. They shared the same father. She was also more than 30 years younger than Jefferson, and she was legally his property. Starting in the 1790s, reports began circulating that Jefferson was fathering children with Sally. He denied it. Supporters called it a smear campaign. Historians debated the truth for over 200 years. But in 1998, DNA testing proved that at least one of Hemings' children had histories from Hemings' descendants confirmed the long-rumored relationship. Jefferson likely fathered 6 children with Sally Hemings, 4 of whom survived to adulthood. Sally was never freed, though her children were. The power dynamics in their relationship are impossible to ignore. She was an enslaved woman. He was her master. And even now, historians still debate the nature of their bond. Was there affection, coercion, survival? No matter the answer, the fact remains. Jefferson's private life reflected the same contradictions as his public one. He spoke of equality, but lived inequality. He defended liberty while denying it to others. He claimed virtue, but practiced deception. Even Monticello, the elegant estate that Jefferson designed, hides secrets. Beneath its manicured lawns and neoclassical halls were quarters for enslaved families. Historians have uncovered journals, artifacts, and even skeletal remains that tell a different story than the one tourists once saw. Monticello wasn't just a home, it was a plantation, and like its owner, it wore a mask. Yet despite all this, Jefferson remains a central figure in American history. His face is on Mount Rushmore. His words are still quoted in courtrooms and classrooms. He laid the foundation for American democracy and also helped build the structure of racial inequality that lasted centuries. How do we reconcile this? Can we admire Jefferson's ideas while condemning his actions? Can we honor his achievements without ignoring his failures? Some say Jefferson was simply a man of his time, that slavery was a norm and personal contradictions were common. But others argue that Jefferson knew better. He wrote better, and he chose to do the opposite anyway. In private letters, he even admitted slavery was morally wrong. He called it a moral depravity and warned that it would bring a reckoning to America. Yet he freed only a handful of people in his lifetime and never once stood up to end the system publicly. Jefferson was a genius, no doubt, a brilliant writer, a talented architect, a deep thinker. But genius does not equal goodness, and brilliance is not a substitute for justice. Today, as America continues to wrestle with its past, Jefferson stands as a mirror, a reflection of the nation's highest ideals and its darkest contradictions. He represents the gap between what we say and what we do, between the dream and the reality. And maybe that's why his story still matters. Because in examining Jefferson's life, honestly, unflinchingly, we're forced to examine our own, to ask ourselves, what legacies are we building? What truths are we ignoring? What contradictions are we living? Thomas Jefferson changed the world with his words, but his actions tell another story. A story of power, privilege, silence, and choice.